Business for Unicorns podcast is for fitness business owners who want actionable strategies to grow their business, take amazing care of their clients, and build a life and business they truly love. I'm your host, Michael Keeler, co-founder of Mark Fisher Fitness, and through Business for Unicorns, I'm a coach and consultant to industry-leading fitness studios around the world. Let's get started. Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today's a bonus episode with Mark Fisher. What's up, sir?
Bonusing.
We're gonna get into this hardcore bonusing right away. We're just gonna dive right in.
Let's do it.
So we're gonna cover two topics today. Let's start with the first one. This is something that's come up a lot with Unicorn Society members I'm talking to. I know that this is something we talk a lot about in our Time Ninja course, which is inbox management. And so before people stop watching or stop listening, stick with us. I know this isn't like the sexiest topic, but email is one of those things that we all interact with these days, for better or for worse, or most of us do. No one ever taught us how to use it properly. And many of us struggle with how to fit it into our workflow and into our lives in an efficient way, in a consistently efficient way. And many people I'm talking to are going through ups and downs, where some days they feel like they're really on top of it. Maybe they're even inbox zeroing. For those of you who know what that means, is getting your inbox to zero on a regular basis. And then sometimes they're just kind of falling off the wagon, so to speak, where they're just like, I can't even clear my inbox once a week, let alone once a day. And so let's just start with some of Mark Fisher's most favorite inbox management strategies. Where would you start with people in terms of helping them develop a really healthy relationship with their inbox?
Yes. Well, starting with the qualification, of course, that everyone is coming from a different place. And I want to acknowledge, I'm going to give you a couple general nuggets, but one thing that virtually everyone would benefit from doing, and virtually nobody does, myself included much of the time, is being disciplined about batching, which is to say, instead of doing emails all day long, you want to have very specific periods of specific modules of time where you go in, you get through as many emails as you can, and then you go away from your email. So what makes this efficient is the challenge is if you're doing it all day long, it actually will take more total time. Furthermore, it'll be a constant source of mental distraction throughout the day because, of course, emails do create the dopamine hit. They are the slot machine. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it money? Is someone mad at me? You never know what you're going to get in your email inbox, that's for sure. So I think being disciplined about choosing, I think in a perfect world, it would be perhaps 3 checks per day. You could do 4 if you wanted. That is infinitely better than what most people do, is all day long checking. The challenge is it does require a lot of discipline. Very few people can do that consistently. But what I want people to appreciate is what I often say is if you're only checking your email 3 times per day, but you actually respond to everything and you really make it a discipline based on your workload, you do 3 blocks of anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes. Well, 45 minutes, you're doing a lot of email at that point. But for some of you, that's not unreasonable. I probably do around that much myself, right? So in spite of you only checking email 3 times per day, you will be the most responsive person you know, because in practice, if you do it at 10, 2, and 6, that means no one is ever waiting for you for more than 4 hours or to the beginning of the next business day. You would be the most responsive person you know, and you would have more clarity of your life, and you wouldn't feel like you're constantly beholden to your email.
Yeah, I think that's a great place for most people to start. I'll give you 2 other thoughts. One thought is, often when I find people telling me that they can't get to their inbox, it's often because they've had this kind of task creep, where they just have too much on their plate. They've said yes to too many things, haven't said no enough. Now there's so much on their plate that email takes a back seat and doesn't feel like a priority. And so I think one of the things that we actually do in our Time Ninja course is we help people do a time audit once in a while. So I think for listeners and viewers, certainly when I find myself in this place where I just can't get to my email, I have so much on my plate, it's time for me to do a time audit. And the time audit that we do is really quite simple. You can do this in under 30 minutes, which is make a list of all the things you do in an average week. Everything from, making breakfast to shopping to checking emails to meetings to sleeping to whatever, showering. Make a list of those things. Step 1. Step 2, estimate how much time you're spending all week on that activity, in minutes. And then step 3, use like the 4 Ds to go down the list and say, what are you going to do and commit to doing forever or continue to do for now? What are you going to delay or kick down the road? What are you going to delegate and ask for help on? What are you going to delete? And that simple task of, listing all the things, estimating how much time I'm spending on it, which is eye-opening in and of itself. And then using the 4 Ds to kind of sort through and filter your list might make some extra time, and then you can reprioritize your inbox if that's useful. So that's the first thing, is you just might need a time on it. You might need to hit the reset button on what's actually on your plate. And the other thing I'll say, which is actually maybe a little cheeky, but if you're having trouble with email, just tell less people to email you, or tell more people to email you less. Just stop using email so much. Right? I find so much of our communication defaults to email, even though it's the least best platform for most communication. Email is really great at being like a digital memo of like, here's some information I want you to have. It's not great for dialogue or conversation or collaboration, or when the stakes are high or emotions are high. It's not good for most kinds of communication. So if you
don't email angry, for the love of God, people.
Yeah. So I think, one of the ways you get better at managing your email is just have less of it. So move more people to texting, or to voice chatting, or to video chatting, things like Vox or Marco Polo, or even just for those people who have iPhones, you can do a little voice memo. I send more voice memos than anything these days, because it's just faster and more efficient for me than email. So I know that's really not a tip for improving your email, but it is. If you just have less of it and move to other more efficient ways of communicating with people, then I think the burden of email decreases.
Yeah, I think one thing that is going to be interesting to see, part of my own experience is I've certainly moved more towards voice text, and I try to be cognizant of how particularly people on our team want me, or in some cases don't want me, to communicate with them. Voice texts are interesting in that they're much faster for me to send, and they're much harder and more difficult for the receiver to read. So that certainly is another consideration. So when I get a voice text, it usually takes me longer, even if it's 2 to 3 minutes, because I can read an email much faster than that. But it is a very important point to be considered about what is the most efficient way to share this messaging. Very important point. I just want to highlight again, the emails are just not a great place for dialogue. You can occasionally do project work in a Google Doc, perhaps, because you're able to leave comments, but that is set up to share work for teams. Emails is just not a great place for that. And I know part of the issues a lot of people get into is they're so resistant to have meetings. And certainly you don't want to have meetings that are doing what emails can do and just sharing information, but you can't really effectively have debate and discuss things, and it's just not efficient. It's clunky, and it's going to waste your time. So don't do that.
Yeah. I think that those are great places to start, I think, for most people listening. Anything else we have to say about email for people really just struggling to get through?
I would say 2 quick things. The first thing I would say is, I admit I have a little bit of an emotional thing around email, because I have a belief. And that is, I believe that I'm the co-owner of a business that has done millions and millions and millions of dollars simply because I answer my emails. And I understand a lot of people cannot seem to manage their inbox. They can't seem to do it. And I also concede that is a superpower of mine. And frankly, one of the ways in which I'm probably broken. I show up in compulsive ways. Nonetheless, I think until email goes away, you have to find ways to take it seriously. You cannot bury your sand in it, and you all bury your head in the sand, so to speak. And you also don't want to be completely beholden to it and just be doing emails all day long. The other point I'll make, my final point, is I think our relationship with tech is broken. I'm not the first person to say there's nothing innovative about that comment, but I would direct listeners to, there was an amazing podcast I listened to recently. Ezra Klein on the New York Times podcast interviewed Cal Newport, who wrote a book, Digital Minimalism. And I think he wrote one recently, I think it might even precisely be on email. And I'm so convinced that our relationship with personal tech, really with all of these forms of digital communication, is broken. And the takeaway for me, what I thought was very resonant, and I realized, that is absolutely how I have contributed to this in negative ways for my team, is that the advent of asynchronous digital communication was a well-intentioned attempt to take this Peter Druckerian, this famous management thinker, this Peter Druckerian idea of free the workers, give them autonomy, let them do the work the way they want it, when they want, however they want, free them. And that was a great idea. And in theory, email and personal tech was going to free you, because you can work from everywhere. You don't have to be in the office. We don't need meetings all the time. You can send me some, I just get around to when I get around to it. And I don't think it worked. I think we went too far the other way. I'm resisting the temptation to go in many metaphors about the world right now, but I think we went too far the other way. And that in fact, my prediction for what's going to happen for teams to work more effectively is probably moving towards more synchronicity. So even a place like Mark Fisher Fitness, lately I've continued to noodle on, should we just have a standing daily meeting for the leadership team, just 10 minutes where we meet every day? I don't know yet, frankly, because our departments are so balkanized, for lack of a better word. Our departments are, the things we talk about are so specific to that department. I'd be the only person getting a value because I'm the only person that's probably plugging into everything. But I do think you can overdo this and move too much away from meetings, and it actually becomes less efficient, and it can really mess with your ability to do high level creative work because you feel like you're on all the time, which is partly why I'm such a proponent of having your phone always on do not disturb. That's not 100% ideal for all situations, for all professions, for all moments in your professional career. But I guess I'll sneak in yet another tip here is I would suggest only do email on your computer because you'll be able to type much faster. And when you break email down to its component parts, one of the skill sets is literally typing speed. So if you are futzing with your phone, if you're doing some phone futzing maru, you will not be typing as quickly. It's more efficient to batch it and do it in very dedicated periods on your computer.
Yeah, for sure. We should just have a whole nother podcast talking about the influence of tech on our lives and things. Maybe even have some guests to chat with us about it. I mean, one of the people I love listening to present on this and that I read about is Tristan. I think he pronounced it Tristan Harris.
Tristan, yeah.
Yeah. I think, has been one of the thought leaders in this space for a while. And he speaks so eloquently about all the issues.
He is a very intelligent guy. Yeah, interestingly enough, I did a Clubhouse last night, actually wound up being largely on this topic with a friend of mine, Tobias Rose Stockwell, who's writing a book on this topic. And yeah, there are a lot of people that are really thinking hard on this. And I'll say in closing, I don't consider myself an expert on this. And I'm very appreciative that people that are that smart are thinking a lot about it because we're in a pickle here. I don't know how we get out of this, but I would say if anybody listening there is in tech, I think the move is, and maybe you invite us and we can help you make this because I don't know how to do the tech thing, but I would like to create something that is like Slack or like Gmail. And the UVP is you can only use it for an hour a day. Yeah. So it forbids you. It's like the opposite. Like you can only use it. So as an employer, I would love to be like, my team can only use the window's going to close. So they don't have to use their discipline to override their entire evolutionary programming and resist the desire to go see, is there good news? Is there bad news? And play the slot machine with their email. You can only use it. And then it would be similar. You would set it up like batching. It's like there's a window at 10, a window at 2, and a window at 6. Nobody can touch their emails outside of that. I don't know how practical that is, but I think it's kind of practical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things we've seen moving in that direction. Even just Apple's iPhone reporting on our usage and giving us a breakdown of it and be able to set alarms or limits to yourself for what you can do. I think we're moving in that direction because, all those companies know how harmful their products have been. And so we're going to be moving in that direction more and more, I hope.
I agree. I think we're going to see more data on that. And I admit I can trend at times to it, what some might say a naive techno-utopian, and that I think we can figure this out. But again, we're going to have data on this, and these companies are incentivized to make more money. If their workers are not miserable and overstressed all the time, you'll make more money. Don't you want to make more money, evil money people? Well, here's the path. Yeah, and then you'll accidentally make their lives better. Yay.
I even wonder about the data on that. I wonder if they make more money if people have more problems.
What kind of problems?
The problems they need to buy things to solve.
Oh, you mean perhaps they're purposely making this issue of overwhelm?
I'm not suggesting every tech company on the planet is trying to ruin people's lives to make more money, but I am suggesting I would love to see the data on whether or not actually having happier humans and happier communities and cultures actually makes tech companies more money. I don't know that they're incentivized to actually make people's lives happier and healthier.
Yeah, certainly I think that's one of the great debates of the conscious capitalism movement, right? And there is... Yeah. And I don't know, I've always been probably naively, and I don't have data on it. It's felt true to me that you'll make more money if you make your people happy. But I think I've certainly always been, you've seemed to be online with this, that, if we only make like 90% as much as the money, but everybody's like happy, like
totally.
Because aren't we only trying to like be happy? Should we like not cut out the middleman and just like not be miserable? Like, great, we have all this money and we're miserable. This sucks.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we can keep talking about this, but also we can switch gears because that's a fun conversation. But the other thing we were planning on talking about today was what's the context? The context is for our Unicorn Society group, our group of fitness business owners that we work with for a year at a time or more. Many people have been with us now for 4 years. We do basically a quarterly retreat. And one of the things we do in these quarterly retreats is we do some quarterly goal setting and planning and kind of scorecard maintenance and all that thing. We just did it this past Saturday from when we're recording this, about a week or so. You'll be hearing this about a week later, and I thought we'd just kind of talk through why we force all the clients we work with to do this quarterly planning, a little bit about just high level about what it looks like, and if you're new to this idea of having like an annual and quarterly cadence to your planning and goal setting, then maybe just some tips for how to get started. So, big picture, Fisher, you just talk a little bit about how we landed on this set of ideas and why we think it's so valuable for gyms to do some sort of quarterly goal setting and planning.
Yeah. I think it is, first of all, it's a common practice in any real business to do some sort of periodic step out. I don't think there's anything particularly magic about 3 months, but it makes sense in a year that is composed of 4 sets of 3 months. It's not too long, but it's also not too short. It allows you time to get stuff done. And it does seem anecdotally, I assume there's not actually data on this, but anecdotally it does seem that about 90 days is long enough for whatever you plan to last to start to entropy. So there are a number of commercial systems available that work with a quarterly model. The most well-known ones are the book Scaling Up / The Rockefeller Habits, which is a company called Gazelles, which does a quarterly planning process, which is awesome. You should read it. It's amazing. It's too complicated for you, probably. I think smaller business, it's just too sophisticated. In fact, Mark Fisher Fitness runs something called the Entrepreneur Operating System, which a lot of people know from a book called Traction, which I think is better. It's a simpler version of it. And I would say for the typical training gym / micro gym, even that might be a little bit unnecessary to go through the whole rigmarole of the EOS system. But nonetheless, I think taking every 3 months, stepping out of your business, reviewing what has happened, then getting very clear on what are all the things we could work on. I'd say wrangle all your goats, put all your goats in the pen, put the goats in order, and decide which of the potential issues you can work on are going to have the biggest, most impactful change on your business. And then set a few, no more for the company. The 3 to 7 is the standard. I like 3 myself. I think it's harder to get stuff done when there's too many. And then make some systems of touching base with this no less than weekly, so that the whole company is focused on these handful of things we're going to do to move the ball forward.
Yeah, I think it's a great start for most people. I think when I talk to micro gym, training gym owners on a regular basis, the thing that I hear them struggle with the most is just like, I'm feeling pulled in a million directions. Like, I wear all the hats in my business. I'm not sure how to prioritize what I do next. And so they find themselves most days just being reactive to the thing that feels like it's smoldering or smoking or on fire the most. And we all know, including them, everyone I talk to, everyone knows that's not the best way to work. Everyone knows it's exhausting. It's a recipe for burnout. And you're also going to focus on a lot of low-hanging fruit, small tasks that are not actually very impactful or meaningful. And so I think that's part of why I'm such a big fan of this process, because even though we've only been doing it for, I think, less than a full year with our Unicorn Society group, right? I've already seen the people who have taken on this process of every quarter sitting down and thinking of the 3 to maybe 5 goals that are the most important thing they're going to accomplish in the next 3 months. Really getting clear about them, communicating them to their team. If they have a team, maybe having people on their team be captains of certain goals. Like, that process really helps clarify that daily struggle of like, what do I focus on next?
Yeah.
So when you have those goals, the answer is just your goals.
Yeah.
The answer, what do I focus on next? Your 3 to 5 most important goals for this quarter. What does your team focus on next? If they have some extra time or capacity, the 3 to 5 goals that are most important things you do this quarter. And it's just immediately focusing.
Yes.
So there's so many reasons why I think people should start this. And I agree wholeheartedly, which is why we kind of created our own version for the people we work with, because both the EOS system, the Gazelle system, they're just too complicated. But can you just talk a little bit about some of the exercise we go through when we have a planning day? So I'll say this, that what we recommend is having at least one day, or at least a half a day for most of you, set aside every quarter where you and your key decision makers actually sit down and do the planning for the next quarter. So you just talk about some of the exercises that we kind of go through during that planning session.
Yeah, and I'll focus on the quarterly meetup with the quick qualification. There's also ideally an annual meetup that sometimes need 2 days, which is the same thing, but you're just doing it for the year. So instead of just quarterly goals, you also create yearly goals. Instead of just looking at the previous quarter, you look at the previous year. So the first thing that is valuable, you do some kind of check-in of some kind, right? A quick moment to be like, where you're at, how's your day, how's your head, what's going on with you. Then you want to make ideally a list of all the things that went well the previous quarter. And this is very important because you want to start there with some positive energy, and because as humans and entrepreneurs, we tend to focus on what's not working, what has yet to be done. And it's very easy to not take a moment to be like, wow, holy cow, we did a lot of stuff. So that is an important thing to do. From there, you want to review your previous goals quarters, and you want to make sure that they happened. And if they didn't happen, they get moved forward to what is called the issues list, which again is this giant pen full of goats, these issues, which are importantly not just problems, but they're also opportunities. So the list of all these things you could do to move the ball forward. And then you want to make sure your issues list is complete. So if you're doing this with a team, this is very valuable because it allows all of you to review the existing issues list. And if you're doing this while you already have one, you make sure it's still relevant. There's nothing on there that doesn't need to go. And then importantly, I think there's real value. And this is one of the things that I think we're going to be hopefully looking to tweak up about ours to make it even more effective. Even if there's only 2 to 3 people on your team that are thinking about the direction of the business, the opportunity for all of you to take a moment and write down in silence what each of you think the business should be working on can be very powerful, because then you can list all of the things that all of you think the business should do. And then you go through a process of organizing and sorting, keeping some things, killing some things for now, maybe they go on the issue list, maybe get rid of them all together, and then combining things until collectively you land on something that your leadership team, whether it just be you, as is often going to be the case, or maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 to 5 people, you're all on the same page that, oh, if we can just get these things done, we'll really be moving the business in a good direction. And then from there, you want to move on to make sure that you are having systems for tracking specifically who owns it, which is again important if it's not just you. And also, what are the metrics that you may or may not be tracking? Most businesses, when you create a scorecard, that's a yearly endeavor. And you don't want to be changing your weekly numbers you're tracking too much, but you do want to have weekly numbers that are tracking the overall health of the business. They're tracking the yearly goals, and in some cases are also tracking to the quarterly goals.
Yeah, awesome.
Did I forget anything?
There's other things we can and have worked in, but I think that's really the gist of it. So for listeners and viewers who, want a quick recap, your agenda for this meeting is 1, start with some conversation starter to get the juices flowing, do a review of what all the things that went well and or lessons learned from your past quarter or past year, depending on what you're doing this for. Yeah, then you want to start by making a list. Ideally, to Mark's point, everyone who's in the room or in the virtual room makes a list of all the things you think you could or should work on in the next quarter. Then you go through a rigorous process. This is like the bulk of the meeting for most people, where you just debate, where you just, you argue in a really productive way to get 3 to 5 of those ideas to win. And he mentioned there's some that you kind of keep on the list, some that you kill, some you combine. And that is a process that, I think, was really inspired directly by the EOS system.
Yeah.
And that's really just a widowing down process. So you can land on 3 to 5 most important things that your company's going to focus on the next quarter. And then the last part is making sure that you have some metrics, some qualitative, quantitative things that you are measuring to make sure you're actually going to hit those goals on a weekly basis. How do you know if you're on track or on your path to achieving those things? And there's a lot of other nuance and all of that, but I think that's a really good place to start. And like I said, we've only been doing this for a little bit less than a full year with our team, with all of our clients at Unicorn Society. And I've seen a dramatic change in their ability to understand what to focus on every day, their ability to set goals and achieve them, their ability actually to forecast what they're capable of achieving has already started to improve.
Yes.
Their ability to delegate to their team because the goals are clear has already started to improve. So there's so much value to be had from this kind of clarity of purpose and mission, even as a very small company.
Yeah, it's essentially a business system of a good personal time management system. There's a lot of parallels. And one of the things that I think makes this so valuable, both for productivity and for emotional sanity, is you're bringing order out of chaos.
Yeah.
And importantly, remember, the essence of strategy is all the things that you're not going to do. So EOS in particular is often positioned as the system that protects the business from the entrepreneur. Now, again, in an organization like a training gym, usually you don't have these levels of hierarchy or these management structures in place. But in practice with a larger company, the premise, and which is not untrue much of the time, is the entrepreneur is a vision person. They're thinking of all the ideas and they go to and some of you will relate to this. You go to the workshop, you want to perform better. Now you have these new things you want to do for some program design. So you go to your team, you're like, this is a new exercise we're doing and we're changing this thing. And I also saw this business thing. So we're doing the marketing totally differently. And that is not great because you will feel frantic, you will feel harried, and your team will not enjoy you a whole lot. Remember, the metaphor I always use for leadership is you are driving a van, and it is a very long, creepy van with no windows, and your whole team is in the back seat. So you might feel perfectly comfortable up the front, making quick changes, deciding you're going to get coffee real quick. But meanwhile, your team in the back is like, whoa. So this helps prevent you from giving your team whiplash. Because if you think about it logistically, even if you come up with an amazing idea, do you think is going to completely change the business? Well, just write it down somewhere. And in no more than 12 weeks at the most, you're going to be talking about it. In most cases, maybe you'll have your idea closer to the quarterly meeting, but you don't have to actually wait that long. And creating the discipline to create a holding pen for ideas so you're not constantly changing things is going to be massively important for your team's well-being too.
Yeah, that's it. I think that, that like leadership whiplash is a real thing, that if you're as a leader, you're just constantly moving things so fast in this direction or the other without proper context or heads up or thinking about the capacity of the people on your team or the thoughts and feelings and opinions of the people on your team. It's really just, it's a recipe for burnout and people not to like you very much. And this process really does help with that. The one thing you just mentioned that I forgot to, in my summary, was some sort of issues and opportunities list, which I think in and of itself is a great strategy. Even if you don't do the rest of this, and you start keeping a repository of things that you want to work on someday, things that you either want to fix because they're broken or opportunities you want to take advantage of. I think that's fantastic. And I think as a leader, that also helps you connect with your team to make sure that they see that that things can improve, and just by itself, I think it has so much power.
Yeah, it's sort of the time management old saw. The brains are for having ideas, not for remembering them. That you will feel less present if you have all these things you should kind of work on. Oh yeah, I have to do this other thing. The discipline that we've adopted at Mark Fisher Fitness that I don't know. I don't know if we made this up, but it's working for us. I don't know. Somebody else is probably already doing this. Maybe we stole it from them, but we have gotten. This has been very helpful, at least for me. Is we've even gotten disciplined about the issues list. We're very specific about a short-term issue is something we're planning to discuss within the next 3 months. A long-term issue is something we're planning to discuss between 3 months and a year out. And if it's anything more than a year out, we usually don't even log it because you could start to make yourself, you could really go overboard with this and make a list of all the things you want to do in the next 20 years of the business. And since you have no idea what's going to happen in a year anyway, I think that could be another useful discipline. All the things you realistically think that you want to fix and or opportunities you want to take advantage of in the next 12 months should ideally be represented on there. And then what we've done is we further bifurcate them between short-term issues, which we're planning to do in the next few months, and long-term ones, which we're not going to be discussing on a regular basis. But at the next quarterly meeting, sure enough, we'll look at the entire list again and decide, because the other thing that is interesting too, that will be hopefully a fun thing you find, that it was interesting. I was looking at Mark Fisher Fitness's issues list as we have our meeting on Tuesday. And there are a number of things on the long-term list that don't need to be there anymore because we've solved them somehow.
Yeah, that happens. It happens. Those things that just kind of the seeds we plant, like, hey, we all know this is a problem. Let's put it on the list. Right. And somehow they will fix themselves, or that it's just no longer relevant by the time you think you want to get to them.
Or or we solved by something else. Yeah,
exactly. There's some ripple effect somewhere else we weren't anticipating. But I really love the discipline of like, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. A year from now, let's not make a list of things we're going to do.
That's plenty. We can all agree last year. Who knows? We'll be zombies next year.
We also make up for that by having like long-term vision statements where we do think really thoughtfully about what we want to create long-term. And so that checks that box for us. So I think that if you want to get really whimsical and be visionary about what you're going to create in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, cool. That's a different exercise. It belongs to a different place.
And a worthy one. But
totally do it. But it just doesn't belong on this list of things you're going to be really pushing your team to solve right now.
I would direct anybody that is interested in this. I do think it's worth giving the traction book a read, as you'll find a lot of the structure valuable. I want to share, I read it. I've now read it. I'm on my 5th reading, believe it or not. And the first time I read it, I didn't get it. I kind of got it. Like it didn't make sense to me until it was in practice. So I would just offer, if you are a training gym or micro gym owner and you'd be interested in getting some help with this, you should reach out to Michael and I. We can certainly just give you some informal resources and answer some questions. And certainly if it ever made sense for you to join the Unicorn Society, that's part of the value is we bring you through this process every 3 months. So you can really feel like you have order out of your business and you're working on the most impactful things. And then you will make more money, help more people, and like your life more.
Yeah, 100%. And you can go on businessforunicorns.com and click on work with us. If you go to Unicorn Site, you can join the waitlist now and just know when enrollment opens. We also are planning to have a course on Unicorn University that is specifically about this at some point.
Great.
So I think, if you go to Unicorn University on our website and sign up for that waitlist, you'll know when that opens up. And I know we'll have a course on this. I think that's all the time we got today, Fisher.
It is.
We did it. We did it.
We did it.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I know that, talking about inbox wasn't very sexy, and maybe, long-term business planning, some people might think isn't, but this is
so
important
sexy.
shit.
These are. Yeah, I hope you learn to like these. If you're really turned off by this, I hope you come to love this, because it's kind of like the whole deal. It's like the whole thing.
Yeah, it's true. You got to learn to love the game, and this is what the game.
Love the game, baby.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, dude. We'll talk again soon.
Bye now.
Hey friends, before you go, just one more thing. If you enjoy this podcast, you get value out of it, you enjoy listening, please share this podcast, comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Please share it with friends and family. We don't spend any money on marketing or advertising. And so the only way people find out about this podcast is from you. So please do everything you can to share it with friends and fellow colleagues in the fitness industry. We love making it, and we want to keep doing it for a long, long time. So I appreciate your support. Go have a kick-ass day. Bye.